Bolshevik Revolution. Of course, it was the Rothschild hand that sparked the Communist Revolution in 1917, and ultimately the murder of the Tsar in 1918.
They murdered the Tsar and his family and took his gold, which was sent to Paris and to Kuhn-Loeb Company in New York and the other Rothschild offices, London and so forth.
Eustace Mullins explains the satanic hand behind the Bolshevik Revolution.
It would have been too obvious if the Rothschilds of London were sending all their money over to Russia to help the communists, so they did it through their favorite patsy, which is the American government. They even formed a special firm on Wall Street in 1916 to finance the Communist Revolution in Russia, which was called American International Corporation. And its directors were Percy Rockefeller, the richest men in the United States, including a financier named George Herbert Walker, who just happened to be the grandfather of George Bush, our president.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Do you think for 1 second Vladimir Putin has forgotten the satanic hand in that history? After all, it's well established who these people worship.
They were moneylenders to begin with in Austria, and they became, which they are now, the richest family in the world. They are not considered humans by the occult world. They're considered gods. They believe that gods, sons and daughters of Lucifer, dwell in these human bodies. And when the humans die, the Rothschilds die, they go into the next Rothschild born. And they're not to be treated as men, they're to be treated as gods. And believe me, they are treated as gods. Their word is absolute law.
And at this point, it's equally well established who Vladimir Putin worships. Christianity has retaken Russia by storm under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, who in a speech just a few years ago said that in the West, politics treats a family with many children as equal to a homosexual partnership. Faith in God, he says, is equal to faith in Satan. And again, do you think for 1 second Putin has forgotten the satanic hand behind the Bolshevik Revolution? I bring it up because it seems Linda Rothschild has become unhinged, as our friend Liz Crokin put it, trashing President Trump, calling the president an idiot. One wonders what she would have made of a Hillary Clinton presidency. Oh, wait, she was one of the strongest supporters of Hillary Clinton, holding multiple $100,000 per plate fundraisers for the witch. You see, it's become very clear at this point that what's happening globally is not just a clash of politics or ideologies, it's a clash of spiritual beliefs. It is, at its heart, spiritual warfare. The ideology of Rothschild Zionism versus Christianity. The age-old fight between light and dark, between Satan and Jesus Christ. And the pedophiles that are rampant in Washington, D.C., in Saudi Arabia, and around the world in places like the city of London are not lost on Vladimir Putin. In fact, in that same speech he said, and I quote, "The excesses and exaggerations of political correctness in these countries indeed leads to serious consideration for the legitimization of parties that promote the propaganda of pedophilia." Surely it's no wonder that Putin has now blocked any adoptions of Russian children into the arms of citizens of the United States, because he understands full well that the problem of Pizzagate, Washington, D.C.-centric child sex trafficking, is very real. And Vladimir Putin knows all too well that under the control of Zionism, Western nations have fallen into the trap of hiding or doing away with their Christian values. And he says, and I quote, "Christian holidays and celebrations are abolished or neutrally renamed as if one were ashamed of these Christian holidays. With this method, one hides away the deeper moral value of these celebrations." And most importantly, Putin notes, without the moral values that are rooted in Christianity and other world religions, without rules and moral values which have been formed and have been developed over millennia, people will inevitably lose their human dignity. And we think it is right and natural to defend and preserve these moral Christian values. The war going on right now is very real. Given Linda Rothschild's recent unhinged tweets in which she relentlessly targets Trump, targets Sean Hannity, is pro-Paris Climate Accord, and pro-John McCain, the avowed Zionist traitor, this post from QAnon is particularly interesting. Q writes, distress call to others will do your family no good at this stage. We know where you, the family, are at all times and can hear you breathing. Now in brackets within that post are the letters capital L, little d, capital R, which would seem to reference Linda Rothschild. So are the elite families on the run? Are they in a panic? Did their sure bet Hillary Clinton not get into the White House? Is it possible that the Justice Department could now be used in the pursuit of actual justice? Well, given the Bush and Clinton Rothschild puppet families' dwindling power, it most certainly must be a concern to people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and John and Tony Podesta, because as Putin well knows, the pedophilia ring in Washington, D.C. suggests that those very same people are involved. And according to this article by the Muslim Issue, which I mentioned in my last video, it has been an open secret in Washington that the State Department has been extremely sensitive to criticism of its actions regarding Saudi Arabia and its princes. There has been an unusual amount of personal turnover at the Saudi Arabian desk, where officials showing the slightest tendency toward ethics and morality are either transferred or terminated to make an example to others. And what you need to know about this article is that it was written in 2016. So why the State Department sensitivity? There are things going on in Saudi Arabia which are so embarrassing to Washington that if the United States citizenry knew, their worst fears about Washington would be corroborated. One such sensitivity? Child abductions by Saudi princes.
They're kidnapping children in Haiti, they're kidnapping children all over the world, because guess who set up the International Center for Missing Children? Bill fucking Clinton.
Saudi royals are famous for clandestine purchasing of large number of child sex slaves in the world. Earlier, these slaves were procured from Africa and poor Asian countries. However, with the current inflow of oil wealth, Saudi princes have extended their slave purchases all over the world. Oil wealth has enabled them to become more selective and specialized in child sex slave purchases in the high-end European and North American market. Let that sink in.
The realtor found a handkerchief. I think it has a map that seems pizza related. So this is one of the very strange emails that appears to be coded and which first got us curious about what on earth they were talking about. And it's from Susan Sandler to John Podesta. And you can see the WikiLeaks email number at the bottom there, so you can go and look it up if you want. Do you think I'll do better playing dominoes on cheese than on pasta? Another email sent from someone from the Sandler Foundation to John Podesta in the WikiLeaks email 50332. So again, this appears to be some kind of code. I mean, would you ever say anything like this to anyone you know?
Given all that's happening right now, globally, and in the United States specifically, the breadcrumbs are leading us to believe that the war against pedophilia, the war against the Clintons, the Bushes, the Rockefellers, and the Rothschilds is very real, and that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump know exactly who the real enemy is.
Well, Fox News has confirmed that the United Nations Security Council is set to vote tomorrow on a draft resolution calling for the withdrawal of President Trump's decision recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. You know, the resolution, though, will likely be vetoed by U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. So what does this mean? Ambassador Dennis Ross joins us now, former Special Middle East Coordinator, Fox News Foreign Affairs Analyst, and author of the book Doomed to Succeed, The U.S.-Israeli Relationship from Truman to Obama. Ambassador, the draft, which I've read, it's sponsored by Egypt. It expresses deep regret at the president's declaration. It says that it, quote, has no legal effect, is null and void, and must be rescinded, and it calls for no nation to place an embassy in Jerusalem. Is this vote tomorrow significant or just merely symbolic?
Well, it's certainly symbolic, and what it reflects is the Palestinian unhappiness over the president's declaration and the fact that it puts the Palestinians on the defensive. You see President Abbas basically making the point by doing this that the Palestinians are not simply taking this, they're not acquiescing in it. The image that was created, even though it's not the reality, the image that was created was somehow Jerusalem was being conceded already. And instead of focusing on the part of the statement that President Trump made, that he's not prejudging the negotiations, the boundaries of Israeli sovereignty still have to be negotiated, instead of trying to focus on that and then seeking to get the administration to be more explicit about what that means. If you're saying that you're not prejudging negotiations, it must presume that Palestinians have claims and needs as well, and those can be addressed in the negotiations and should be. By focusing on the UN, where in fact you're going to have an American veto, you're going to end up producing once again a sign that the Palestinians can't affect things. What you should be trying to do right now is show that you can affect things.
Well, the Palestinians are, staying defiant about this. Here is Riyad Mansour, who is the permanent observer from the Palestinian mission here at the United Nations in New York, speaking about this the other day.
Jerusalem is in the heart of the global international community. Jerusalem is the city of peace. From Jerusalem, we can have peace, and without Jerusalem, we cannot have peace.
So, I mean, how is it possible to have something, otherwise when they deal with this tomorrow?
Well, again, the resolution is not going to change the reality. Even if you can put it on the table, you can have it voted, and when the United States veto it, it means that nothing's going to happen. What the Ambassador Mansour was saying, in effect, is with Jerusalem, you can have peace. Without it, you can't have peace. Well, on the one hand, that's probably right. There isn't going to be a resolution of this conflict between Israelis and Palestinians unless you also resolve the final status of Jerusalem. Now, that has to be negotiated. The President's statement didn't preclude that. In fact, he says it needs to be negotiated. What has to happen, I think, at this point is to find a way to show that the administration is also taking account of Palestinian claims, Palestinian needs. The sole reason you need to negotiate this is to take account of both sides' needs, not the needs of only one side. Ultimately, what's a fact is that a significant part of Jerusalem is going to be the capital of Israel. It already is, and everyone knows that will always be the case. There is a question of whether or not there'll be one capital for Jerusalem or two capitals for Jerusalem, for two states. That, too, ironically, is not being precluded by what President Trump said. He said he's not prejudging the negotiations or the final status of Jerusalem. I understand that because Jerusalem is an emotional issue for all sides, for the Palestinians and the Arabs, they've been put on the defensive by this statement. One thing the administration could be doing is at least quietly talking to Arab leaders about what else they could be doing at this point to create more political space for those very Arab leaders who we want to be a part of any kind of peace process and who we need to be responsive when the administration presents the plan that Jared Kushner says the United States is going to present on Israeli-Palestinian peace.
We're right up against the clock, Ambassador. That is the question. That is the hope. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I'll be there reporting on it, covering for Fox News.